All right, so welcome to week 4. I'm kind of sad that this is the last week. I'm going to talk about how to solve a problem and parent collaboration. But first, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Heather Ross, and I am the mother of a child who struggled with addiction. Started 9 years ago when my daughter was 12. And last year, she had been sober for close to 18 months, most of that time. And she relapsed and was given fentanyl and passed away. So my, whole life up until now has been affected by addiction. It'll continue to be affected by addiction. And, in those early days, it was so hard for me. I felt like I couldn't find the help that I was looking for or the support that I needed. And so, once I started figuring things out, I was like, I'm going to help other parents. So I do that by hosting the Living with Addiction podcast. And I also have a 12-week program for parents. And if you want to know any more about either of those, you can go to heatherrosscoaching.com. So I want to start about talking about how to solve a problem. And the most important thing about this is it's an active process. So these are steps to get to a solution instead of being stuck in that hamster wheel of just spinning about thinking about the problem. So it moves you from being stuck in rumination to acting and resolving the problem. But the hardest thing is like getting yourself to try it. Like we're always so afraid to try things that we don't think that they're going to work or we're not 100% sure they're going to work. So I say just test this out and write it down, because writing it down really helps you open your brain. And then when things get tough, you have that piece of paper that you wrote it down on to go back and look at. So, and the other thing is starting this process with something easy, like the first time, don't do it on some really heavy emotional problem you're trying to solve. Start it with something easy. So the first thing is define the problem as narrowly as you can. So that means like don't lump a whole bunch of problems all together. Try to get really super focused on one thing, one problem that you want to solve. And I would even try to narrow that down to one sentence and not have it be, like really an emotional or judgmental sentence, like just one very clear sentence. The second one is to brainstorm solutions. And again, write everything down, but don't stop the flow of solutions by judging things or thinking that they won't work. Just write everything that comes to your mind down. The third thing is eliminating unwanted ideas. So now this is your chance to judge the ideas or use your discernment and cross off the ones that you don't think are going to work. And also, I forgot where I was at. Oh, the going on to the fourth one, select one potential solution. So if you have some left after you eliminated the ones that you don't think will work, then select which one of those you think is best. If you, in step number 3, eliminated all of your ideas, then you have to go back to step number 2 and brainstorm again. I would also suggest maybe reaching out to somebody who you really trust at that point that might help you with some ideas. Or for me, sometimes I just like to, I'll write down a question that I have about something and I'll give myself like 24 hours or go for a walk and think about it, something to really help my mind to come up with better ideas. The fifth one is identifying possible obstacles. So think about anything that's going to get in the way of you carrying out the solution. And obstacles don't mean that anything has gone wrong. Just think of them as a part of the process. Number 6 is address each obstacle. So write down strategies to help you overcome each obstacle. And again, I said, write them down, like make sure that you're specific about what you're going to do. Because when you get in that situation where you come up against the obstacle and emotions are high, your reasoning is low, you might not be able to remember or think of a way to work through the obstacle. So again, just writing all of this down is really important. And the seventh step is just to see how things go, like go back and evaluate it. And make sure that you're kind to yourself in this process, like you're trying something new and, use your discernment instead of judging yourself, asking like, what went right, what went wrong. And the other part of this step is that it can really give you a chance to find a solution if you didn't find something that worked initially, because you might be closer to a solution than you think. So, going through this process actually could help you solve the problem. All right, we're going to go on to parent collaboration. So, the 20-minute guide mainly talked about the importance of parent collaboration, but it didn't really give any specific ways to do it. So I wanted to give you like 3 tips that I learned in my journey and also like what I've learned from when I'm coaching clients. And, this is really important because addiction can put a ton of ton of pressure on a co-parent relationship or a marriage or partnership, whatever it is, it can really put a lot of pressure on that relationship. And when your marriage is struggling or your co-parenting relationship is struggling on top of your child's addiction, that is just so much more stress, and you don't have that person to turn to for help. So, when things were at their worst with my daughter, they were also at their worst with my marriage. Like we had the worst communication skills. We weren't collaborating at all. And, anytime there was any kind of major event with my daughter, which was like every day, because she was really struggling. My ex-husband was watching her like a hawk and she was being really rebellious about it. So like every day something was happening. And then every day him and I would also end up getting in a fight. So it was always just this 1-2 of so much stress between all me and him and her. And then it just carried on with him and I. So really, like once I finally started meditating and using the tools that I was learning in coaching, and then also using what I had learned from craft on my relationship, with my husband and that communication, we were able to start collaborating more. And every tool that we've talked about so far up to this point will help you with whoever you're co-parenting with. So you can go back and watch the videos up until this point, which we've sent out week 1 and 2. We'll send out week 3 and 4 after tonight. You can watch all of these videos, but keep that co-parent or spouse or whoever in mind as you're watching them, and you can use all of those same tools with them. So it can feel really impossible when you're struggling in that relationship and you aren't able to get on the same page. And I experience this a lot when I'm coaching somebody and they're in like total gridlock with their partner. And so they both have an idea about how things should be handled, and they are both very stuck in their idea and judging the other person's ideas. And as I'm listening to this, I always get an idea for a compromise. And sometimes I'm like, they have to have thought of this. So I don't want to say anything, but I always end up saying anything, just something just in case. And 99% of the time, they have not thought of that compromise. Like it didn't even come to them as an option. So, my number one tip is to compromise, like just asking yourself about it, taking the time to really clearly write down, like, what you want your approach to the situation to be and what your partner wants the approach to be, and again, just one really clear sentence for each of you. That way you can look at it and try and find that middle ground. And the second thing is having curiosity. Be curious about why your co-parent feels the way they do. Be curious about, why they're so stuck in what they want, and ask them to explain it to you. And then listen to understand instead of listening to convince them why they're wrong. And that's a totally different way of listening. So the second tip is curiosity. And the third tip is to consider that person's traumas. Like, has that your co-parent or spouse been affected by addiction or mental illness or any other kind of trauma? Because a child's addiction can trigger all of that. In the case with my ex-husband, he grew up in a home with two alcoholic parents, and he, was abused and he was often neglected. So my daughter's her addiction was very triggering to him. Now, I'm not excusing the way he showed up because of that, but it did help me to have compassion for him and also decide how I was going to approach things with him. And eventually we worked through all of that stuff. Like, once I was using all of these tools with him, we had like amazing communication. And we were going through still like other stuff in our marriage that had absolutely nothing to do with addiction, but we could talk about all of those things, and actually have a very peaceful divorce because we could communicate so well. So these things really pay off in all areas of your life. So use these three tips or anything else that you've learned in the parent guide to help with your parent collaboration.